was a quiet Monday morning at City Hope Hospital. Dr. Jane Smith sat at her desk, looking at the picture of her patient, Mary Wilson. Mary was only 35 years old and had two small children, Tommy, age 8, and Lisa, age 6. Dr. Jane couldn't stop thinking about how Mary's heart was failing and how all the other doctors had said nothing could be done to save her. Dr. Jane was different from other doctors. People called her the lifesaver because she would try new ways to help sick patients when other doctors had given up. She had a special wall in her office covered with hundreds of letters from happy families whose loved ones she had saved. But some doctors at the hospital didn't like her methods. They thought she took too many risks. As she looked through Mary's medical files again and again, Dr. Jane remembered her own past. 20 years ago, when she was just a teenager, her mother had died from the same kind of heart problem. That day, she had promised herself she would become a doctor and find new ways to save people like her mom. Now, at 45, her dark hair was starting to show gray streaks from all the long nights she spent working in her lab. Her phone made a beeping sound. It was a message from Dr. Bob Taylor, the old doctor who had taught her everything she knew. "I heard about the Wilson case. Don't do anything risky." Dr. Jane sighed and deleted the message. Dr. Bob used to support her ideas, but lately he had become worried about her new treatments. Through her office window, she could see Mary sitting in the hospital garden. Mary's husband, Tom, stood next to her wheelchair while their children played nearby. Little Tommy was showing his mom a drawing he had made, and Lisa was picking flowers from the garden. Mary tried to smile, but Dr. Jane could see how tired and weak she was getting. That evening, after most people had left the hospital, Dr. Jane went down to her secret lab in the basement. She used her special card to open the door, a privilege she had earned after saving so many hopeless cases. In the corner of the lab stood a large white freezer. Inside it was her latest creation, a new treatment that mixed special healing cells with an artificial heart valve. She had been working on it for months, even after the hospital board had told her to stop because they thought it was too dangerous. As she prepared the medicine, Dr. Jane thought about all the other times she had broken the rules to save lives, but this time felt different. The treatment wasn't fully tested yet, and deep down, she knew she was taking a bigger risk than ever before. But when she thought about Tommy and Lisa possibly growing up without their mother, just like she had, she knew she had to try. Nancy Brown, the night nurse, was surprised to see her. "Dr. Jane, I thought you went home hours ago." Dr. Jane smiled and said she was just checking on a few patients before leaving. Everyone knew how much she cared about her patients. It's why they called her the lifesaver. What they didn't know was what she was willing to do to keep that reputation. In her room, Mary was sleeping peacefully. The machines around her bed made soft beeping sounds as they tracked her weak heartbeat. Dr. Jane quietly added her new treatment to Mary's IV drip. By morning, either Mary's heart would start healing or something terrible could happen. Dr. Jane tried not to think about that part. As she walked to her car that night, she passed Bill Johnson, the friendly security guard who had worked at City Hope Hospital for over 30 years. "Good night, Dr. Jane," he called out cheerfully. She waved back, wondering if he would remember seeing her there tonight, because somehow she knew this night would change everything. But what Dr. Jane didn't know was that someone had been watching her. In the darkness of the security room, through one of the many cameras, another doctor had seen her enter the basement lab. Dr. Richard Green, who had always been jealous of Dr. Jane's success, smiled to himself as he recorded everything on his phone. He had been waiting years to catch her doing something wrong, and finally, his moment had come. And in a small apartment across town, Anna Parker, a young reporter for the Daily News, was just starting to dig into some strange stories about City Hope Hospital. She had received an anonymous letter about patients miraculously recovering under Dr. Jane Smith's care. Recoveries that seemed too good to be true. As Anna typed notes on her laptop, she had no idea that she was about to uncover the biggest medical story of the year. The next morning, City Hope Hospital was buzzing with excitement. Mary Wilson had made an amazing recovery overnight. Her heart was beating stronger, and she was sitting up in bed, talking and laughing with her children, something she hadn't been able to do for weeks. The other doctors couldn't explain it. Dr. Jane tried to hide her smile as she walked past Mary's room. But Dr. Richard Green wasn't smiling. He sat in his office watching the video from last night over and over on his phone. The footage clearly showed Dr. Jane entering her secret lab and later going to Mary's room. He had always known she was breaking rules, but now he had proof. 20 years ago, they had both started working at City Hope Hospital on the same day. While Dr. Jane became famous for her miracle cures, Dr. Richard had stayed in her shadow. Now was his chance to change that. Meanwhile, reporter Anna Parker was sitting in a small coffee shop across from the hospital, meeting with someone who had asked to stay anonymous. The woman, Sarah Lee, had worked as a nurse at City Hope Hospital for 30 years before retiring last month. Dr. Jane Smith isn't what everyone thinks she is, Sarah whispered, looking nervously around. I've seen things, strange things. Patients who were dying one day would suddenly be completely fine the next. And always, Dr. Jane would be working late the night before. Back at the hospital, Dr. Bob Taylor was getting worried. He looked at Mary Wilson's new test results and shook his head. The improvement in her heart was impossible unless someone had used experimental treatment. He had trained Dr. Jane himself, had watched her become an amazing doctor, but lately she had changed. She was taking bigger and bigger risks. He needed to talk to her before things got out of control. That afternoon, Tommy and Lisa Wilson were playing in their mom's hospital room when Tommy accidentally knocked over a medical cart. As the nurse cleaned up the mess, she found an empty syringe under the bed. It had a strange label that she had never seen before. Following hospital rules, she took it to the pharmacy for checking. The pharmacist, Mike Brown, looked at it carefully. His face turned pale when he realized this medicine wasn't in their hospital records. Dr. Jane was in her office feeling proud of her success with Mary when her computer made a strange noise. Someone was trying to hack into her private files. She quickly shut down her computer, but not before seeing that several files about her secret treatment had been copied. Her hands started shaking. Who could have done this? In the hospital cafeteria, Bill Johnson, the security guard, was eating lunch when he overheard two doctors talking. "Did you hear about Mary Wilson?" one said. "Dr. Green is saying there's something fishy about her recovery. He's calling for an investigation." Bill remembered seeing Dr. Jane at the hospital late last night. Should he tell someone? Dr. Richard Green was just about to send his video evidence to the hospital board when his office door opened. It was Dr. Linda Chen, the hospital's new board member. She had only been there for 3 months, but everyone knew she had a special interest in new medical treatments. "Dr. Green," she said with a strange smile, "we need to talk about Dr. Jane Smith." What nobody knew was that Dr. Linda Chen had her own secret. 20 years ago, she had worked at another hospital where a doctor had tried similar experimental treatments. That doctor had disappeared mysteriously, along with all their research. Now, looking at Mary Wilson's miraculous recovery, Dr. Chen recognized the signs. Could Dr. Jane have found the missing research? As evening approached, Anna Parker was typing furiously at her desk in the Daily News office. She had connected some dots that gave her chills. In the past 5 years, 3 other hospitals in different cities had reported similar mysterious recoveries. Each time, the doctor responsible had suddenly left town or quit medicine. And each time, a board member named Linda Chen had been involved shortly before everything fell apart. The sun was setting when Mary Wilson's husband, Tom, noticed something strange. His wife's miraculous recovery was starting to fade. Her hands were shaking, and she was having trouble breathing again. He ran to get a nurse, not knowing that this was just the beginning of a much bigger problem, one that would soon affect not just Mary, but many other patients at City Hope Hospital. And in her basement lab, Dr. Jane Smith was about to make a terrifying discovery. The latest tests on her treatment showed something she had missed, something that could change everything. But before she could process what she was seeing, her phone rang. It was an unknown number. The voice on the other end said just 5 words. "I know what you did." The mysterious phone call left Dr. Jane frozen in her lab. Her hands trembled as she looked at her latest test results again. The treatment she had given Mary Wilson wasn't just failing. It was changing in ways she had never expected. The healing cells were multiplying too fast, taking over healthy tissue. She had to fix this before anyone else found out. But someone already knew. Dr. Richard Green had just finished his secret meeting with Dr. Linda Chen. "I'll make you head of cardiology once Dr. Jane is gone," she had promised. "Just make sure that video gets to the right people." What Dr. Green didn't know was that Linda Chen had recorded their entire conversation on her own phone. That night, more patients started showing up at the emergency room. They all had the same symptoms: shaking hands, trouble breathing, and racing heartbeats. Dr. Bob Taylor noticed something strange. All of them had been Dr. Jane's miracle patients from the past 6 months. He started pulling their files, his worry growing with each case he reviewed. In her small apartment, reporter Anna Parker couldn't sleep. Her wall was covered with pictures and notes connected by red string. She had discovered that Dr. Linda Chen had worked at 7 different hospitals in the past 20 years. Each time, a doctor would make amazing medical breakthroughs, then disappear. And each time, all their research would vanish too. But the strangest part? The missing doctors were never heard from again. Back at the hospital, Mary Wilson's condition was getting worse by the hour. Her son Tommy was crying in the waiting room while Lisa slept in their father's lap. Tom Wilson was angry. "Yesterday she was fine," he shouted at the nurses. "What did you people do to my wife?" Bill Johnson, the security guard, overheard everything. He remembered the strange lights he'd seen in the basement lab last night. Dr. Jane worked frantically in her lab, trying to create an antidote. Her computer screen flashed with a new email from an anonymous sender. Inside was a photo of her mother from 20 years ago, standing next to a young Dr. Linda Chen. The message read, "Your mother's death wasn't an accident. Stop the treatment, or history will repeat itself." Meanwhile, Nancy Brown, the night nurse, was cleaning Mary's room when she found another strange syringe. But before she could take it to the pharmacy, Dr. Richard Green appeared. "I'll take that," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. As soon as he got it, he called Dr. Chen. "I have the evidence you wanted," he said. But in his excitement, he didn't notice Mike Brown, the pharmacist, watching from around the corner. Sarah Lee, the retired nurse, was about to go to bed when someone knocked on her door. It was Anna Parker, the reporter. "I know what happened to those missing doctors," Anna said breathlessly. "And I think Dr. Linda Chen is about to do it again." Sarah's face went white. She walked to her closet and pulled out an old box. Inside was a dusty journal. "There's something you need to see," she whispered. At midnight, Dr. Bob Taylor decided to check on Dr. Jane's lab, but when he got to the basement, he found the door wide open. Inside, papers were scattered everywhere, and Dr. Jane's computer was gone. On her desk was a single note: "They killed my mother. Now they're coming for me." Across town, in a secret office, Dr. Linda Chen was meeting with mysterious men in dark suits. "Everything is going according to plan," she said. "Soon we'll have Dr. Jane's research, and this time there will be no loose ends." But she didn't know that her phone was still recording everything and automatically uploading it to a cloud drive that someone else was watching. In the hospital parking lot, Mike Brown, the pharmacist, was getting into his car, the stolen syringe hidden safely in his bag. He had to get it tested at his friend's private lab. But as he started the engine, he saw something terrifying in his rearview mirror. A dark figure approaching with what looked like a gun. And in her hidden apartment across the city, Dr. Jane was looking at the final test results. What she discovered made her blood run cold. The treatment wasn't just failing, it was spreading. Every patient who had recovered under her care could now infect others with the modified cells. She picked up her phone to warn the hospital, but the line was dead. On her screen was a new message: "Don't try to stop it. This is bigger than you know." The next morning, City Hope Hospital turned into chaos. Over 50 former patients had returned, all showing the same scary symptoms as Mary Wilson. The emergency room was packed. Dr. Bob Taylor tried to keep everyone calm, but he knew they were facing something they had never seen before. In the parking lot, a cleaning lady found Mike Brown's empty car. Driver's door still open, his coffee cup still warm on the roof. His bag was on the ground, but the strange syringe was gone. When police checked the security cameras, they found 20 minutes of footage missing from last night. Anna Parker sat in Sarah Lee's living room, reading the old journal with shaking hands. It belonged to Dr. David Roberts, one of the missing doctors from 20 years ago. The last entry was chilling. They're not trying to save lives. They're using us to test something else. Linda Chen isn't even her real name. I've discovered what they're really doing with our research. If anything happens to me, look behind the entry stopped there, the pen mark dragging across the page as if he had been interrupted. At her hidden apartment, Dr. Jane was putting pieces together. She found an old photo album and finally understood everything. The picture showed her mother in a lab coat, working at a secret government facility. Next to her was a younger Linda Chen, but her name tag read Dr. Sarah Maxwell, Project Phoenix. On the back of the photo was a handwritten note. If they succeed, the treatment will change human DNA forever. Tommy Wilson was sitting next to his mom's hospital bed when he noticed something strange. The veins in Mary's arms were turning a faint blue color. When he touched her hand, he felt a tiny electric shock. By afternoon, all the sick patients in the emergency room showed the same blue veins. Dr. Richard Green was celebrating his success with an expensive lunch when his phone rang. It was Dr. Linda Chen. "Change of plans," she said coldly. "Meet me at the old factory on River Street. Bring everything you have." But as he drove there, he didn't notice the black van following him. Sarah Lee suddenly remembered something important. She ran to her basement and pulled out an old hospital map from 30 years ago. "Look," she showed Anna Parker, pointing to a section that wasn't on the new maps. "There's a whole other lab level under the hospital basement. That's where they did the real experiments." Back at the hospital, Nancy Brown was checking on patients when she saw something impossible. Mary Wilson was glowing faintly in the dark, and small sparks jumped between her fingers. Other patients started showing the same symptoms. When doctors tried to take blood samples, their needles melted. Dr. Bob Taylor finally found Dr. Jane's hidden computer in a storage room. What he read horrified him. The treatment wasn't just changing people's hearts, it was changing their entire bodies. The healing cells had mixed with something else, something that could let human bodies create and control electrical energy. At the old factory, Dr. Richard Green waited nervously. Instead of Dr. Chen, 3 men in black suits arrived. "Where's the evidence?" they demanded. Before he could answer, the lights went out. In the darkness, he heard a familiar voice. Mike Brown, the missing pharmacist. "Run!" Mike shouted. "It's a trap!" Tom Wilson noticed his children, Tommy and Lisa, starting to show the same blue veins as their mother. But they weren't sick. They were getting stronger. Tommy touched a dead phone, and it turned on instantly. Lisa waved her hand at the TV, and channels started changing by themselves. In her hidden place, Dr. Jane made a shocking discovery. Her mother hadn't died from heart problems 20 years ago. She had been trying to stop Project Phoenix when she was silenced. The project's goal? To create superhumans who could control electricity with their bodies. The heart treatment was just a cover story. At that moment, all across the city, lights started flickering. TV signals got mixed up. Car alarms went off by themselves. And at City Hope Hospital, every patient Dr. Jane had ever treated began to glow with a strange blue light. They were changing, evolving into something else, and nobody could stop it. Dr. Linda Chen watched it all from a secret control room. She smiled as she made a phone call. Phase 1 is complete. The transformation has begun. But she didn't notice the small red light on her phone, showing that someone was recording everything she said. In the air vent above her, Anna Parker held her breath, her recorder catching every word. And deep under the hospital, in the forgotten lab level, something was waking up. Something that had been waiting for 20 years. The real experiment was about to begin. The entire city's power grid was going crazy. At City Hope Hospital, all the changed patients were now giving off strong blue light. Mary Wilson sat up in her bed, electrical sparks dancing between her fingers. Her children, Tommy and Lisa, weren't afraid anymore. They were excited. They could turn lights on and off just by thinking about it. Dr. Jane rushed to the hospital through the dark streets. She now knew the terrible truth. She hadn't invented the treatment at all. She had been guided to create it, step by step, through secret messages and convenient discoveries in her research. They had used her grief over her mother's death to make her finish what her mother had tried to stop. In the old underground lab, Anna Parker and Sarah Lee found something terrifying. Huge tanks lined the walls, filled with glowing blue liquid. Inside each tank was a person, sleeping but alive, their veins glowing with the same blue light as the current patients. Sarah gasped when she looked at the dates on the tanks. These people had been here for 20 years. Dr. Richard Green and Mike Brown were running through the old factory's dark hallways. "They're going to kill us!" Mike shouted, explaining how he'd overheard the men in suits talking about eliminating loose ends. Suddenly, they ran into Bill Johnson, the security guard. "Follow me," Bill whispered. "I know a way out." But why was the hospital security guard at an abandoned factory? Dr. Bob Taylor was trying to keep order in the emergency room when all the changed patients suddenly stood up at the same time, like they were listening to some silent command. They started walking towards the basement, ignoring anyone who tried to stop them. When nurses touched them, they got electric shocks. In her control room, Dr. Linda Chen was furious. Someone had hacked her systems. On her screens, she watched Anna Parker and Sarah Lee discovering the secret lab. "Send the cleanup team," she ordered into her phone. Then she saw something that made her smile. Dr. Jane had arrived at the hospital. Tom Wilson followed his glowing wife and children down to the basement. Other families did the same, watching in amazement as their changed loved ones touched the walls, sending power surging through the building. The old hidden lab door slid open by itself, revealing the terrible secret below. At that moment, Bill Johnson revealed who he really was. "I'm not just a security guard," he told Dr. Green and Mike. "I worked with Dr. Jane's mother 20 years ago. We've been watching, waiting for this day." He pulled out an old badge that read FBI Special Projects Division. In the underground lab, the tanks were opening one by one. The people inside were waking up. The original test subjects from 20 years ago. Dr. Jane's mother was among them, aged only a few days since her death. She opened her eyes, crackling with electric blue energy. "They couldn't kill me," she said to the shocked Anna Parker. "They needed me alive to make the formula work." Dr. Linda Chen's real plan was finally revealed. The changed patients weren't the experiment. They were the battery. Each person's electrical power would be connected to a massive generator, creating endless free energy. But the process would eventually burn them out, killing them. The people in the tanks were the proof, kept alive but drained of power year after year. Dr. Jane ran into the underground lab just as all the changed patients arrived. The sight of her mother alive stopped her in her tracks. But before they could reach each other, Dr. Linda Chen appeared with armed guards. "Wonderful family reunion," she said coldly. "Now we can finish what we started." But Chen hadn't counted on one thing. While everyone was distracted, Tommy and Lisa Wilson had been exploring the lab. They found the main power controls, and with their new abilities, they could understand how everything worked. As Chen gave orders to her guards, Tommy winked at his sister. Together, they put their hands on the control panel. The entire lab erupted in blue lightning. Every tank, every machine, every light exploded at once. In the chaos, Dr. Jane's mother reached out and grabbed her daughter's hand. Energy flowed between them, and suddenly Dr. Jane understood everything. Not just about the formula, but how to control it. Above ground, the whole city went dark. But in the hospital basement, a new kind of light was growing. And with it, the real battle was about to begin. Because now, there were two groups of electric people. Those who wanted to use their power to help others, and those who wanted to use others for their power. And in the middle of it all, young Tommy Wilson made a discovery that would change everything. Again, while playing with the broken machines, he found something his child's mind could barely understand. Project Phoenix wasn't about making people control electricity. That was just the first step. The real goal was much, much bigger. In the chaos of the underground lab, Tommy Wilson pulled his sister Lisa close and whispered what he'd found. On a broken computer screen, he'd seen the words, Phase 2, Evolution, Jump. The electric powers weren't the end goal. They were just preparing human bodies for something much bigger. Dr. Jane and her mother, Susan Smith, stood back to back, their combined electric powers keeping Chen's guards at bay. They wanted to use the electricity to change human DNA completely. Susan explained quickly, "They think they can force the next step in human evolution." Dr. Linda Chen laughed as more guards poured in. "Evolution is too slow," she shouted. "Humans are weak. We're fixing that." Her eyes had started glowing blue, too, but her light was different, darker, almost purple. She raised her hands, and dark energy crackled around her. She hadn't just been studying the formula. She'd been using a changed version of it on herself for years. In the upper hospital, regular patients were being evacuated. Dr. Bob Taylor was helping people out when he noticed something strange. Some of the potted plants near the changed patients had started growing incredibly fast, their leaves taking on a blue tint. The electric power wasn't just affecting people, it was changing everything it touched. Anna Parker was recording everything on her phone while Sarah Lee dug through old files. They found proof that the government had shut down Project Phoenix 20 years ago, calling it too dangerous. But Chen and her secret group had kept going, using private hospitals to find test subjects. They called themselves the Next Step. Bill Johnson led Dr. Richard Green and Mike Brown through secret tunnels under the city. "There are more labs," Bill explained. "Chen's group has been doing this in different cities, creating changed humans everywhere. But something went wrong. The changed people aren't following their commands anymore." Back in the underground lab, Mary Wilson suddenly understood why. As electricity flowed through all the changed people, they could feel each other's thoughts. They weren't just getting powers. They were connecting, becoming something new together. Chen's group hadn't planned for this. Tommy and Lisa ran to their parents, trying to explain what they'd learned. The machines weren't just for collecting electricity. They were designed to hook everyone together, to force hundreds of minds to connect at once. But the children had already figured out how to do it naturally without the machines. Dr. Jane watched in amazement as Tommy and Lisa joined hands with other changed children. Blue light spread between them in beautiful patterns. They weren't fighting the change like the adults. They were embracing it, guiding it. They were changing the formula itself through their connected minds. Suddenly, the ground started shaking. Chen's guards dropped their weapons as their own bodies began to glow. They couldn't fight it anymore. The change was spreading through the air now, jumping from person to person. Dr. Linda Chen screamed in rage as her dark purple energy was overwhelmed by the pure blue light. Susan Smith grabbed her daughter's hand. "This is what I discovered 20 years ago," she said. "The formula doesn't just give powers, it connects people. Chen's group wanted to control evolution, to make super soldiers. But they didn't understand that connection means you can't control people anymore. You can only work together." The walls of the underground lab started cracking as roots broke through, glowing with blue energy. The change plants from upstairs were growing, spreading, connecting too. It wasn't just a human evolution anymore, it was touching all living things. Above ground, the city's darkness was broken by beautiful blue lights, spreading through the streets. Every hospital where Chen's group had done their work was glowing. Changed people everywhere were waking up, connecting, understanding. But in a hidden room, Dr. Linda Chen pulled out one last trick, a red emergency button. If we can't control it, no one can. She reached for the button as blue light flooded the room. The button had one word on it: reset. And at that exact moment, little Tommy Wilson discovered what his newfound connection to the hospital's computers was telling him. He turned to his sister with wide eyes. "This isn't the first time this has happened," he said. "Humanity has evolved like this before, but something made us reset, start over, forget." He pointed to Chen's button. "That's what that does. Makes everyone forget. Makes us start over. Again." The question now wasn't just whether they could stop Chen from pressing the button. The real question was, should they? Was humanity ready for this evolution? Or would it just lead to another reset? Another forgotten start? Dr. Jane looked at all the faces around her, changed and unchanged, all connected now in this moment of choice. The next step wasn't just about power. It was about wisdom, about whether they were finally ready to evolve not just their bodies, but their hearts. Chen's finger moved toward the button as blue light filled every corner of the city. The next few seconds would decide not just their future, but which past they would remember. Time seemed to freeze as Dr. Linda Chen's finger moved toward the red button. But before she could press it, something amazing happened. Little Lisa Wilson's voice echoed in everyone's minds. "Stop! Let me show you something." Through their connected thoughts, she shared a memory. Not her own, but one stored in the old computers. The memory showed the last reset 50 years ago. The world had evolved just like now, but fear had taken over. People with powers had fought each other. The reset button had been pressed in panic. Everyone forgot, and humanity started over, their powers locked away in their DNA, waiting. Dr. Jane and her mother joined hands with Mary and Tom Wilson. More families connected, forming a circle of blue light. The children stood in the middle, their pure energy spreading calm through the connection. They showed everyone the truth. The reset button wasn't forced on humanity. It was a choice, a safety switch if things went wrong. Dr. Linda Chen's hand shook over the button. Through the connection, everyone felt her fear, her lonely childhood, her desperate need to control everything. "Look what you've done to me!" she screamed, her purple energy crackling. Her body was rejecting the changed formula she'd used, turning against itself. Tommy walked up to her, unafraid. "We can help you," he said softly. "The formula wasn't ready before. You changed it too much, made it mean, but we fixed it. Let us help." He held out his small hand, blue light glowing gently. In the city above, more amazing things were happening. The connected plants had grown into beautiful, glowing gardens. Sick people in hospitals found their illnesses fading as the positive energy spread. Even animals were changing, becoming more aware, more connected to humans. Bill Johnson, Dr. Richard Green, and Mike Brown emerged from the tunnels to find crowds of people in the streets, all sharing the connection. Old fights were forgotten as people felt each other's hopes and fears. It wasn't perfect. Some were still scared, angry, or confused, but for the first time, they could truly understand each other. Anna Parker and Sarah Lee were documenting everything when they found more hidden files. They learned that humanity had evolved and reset 5 times before. Each time, they got closer to being ready. Each time, more people chose connection over fear. This time felt different. Dr. Bob Taylor watched in wonder as his hospital became a beacon of healing. The changed patients were using their powers to help others. Mary Wilson, now fully recovered, moved from room to room, her touch healing those who were sick. The children played games with their new abilities, teaching adults to see the joy instead of the fear. Through their connection, Dr. Jane finally understood what her mother had discovered. The formula wasn't just about giving people powers or connecting minds. It was awakening something that had always been inside humans. The ability to choose love over fear, understanding over control. Dr. Linda Chen fell to her knees crying. Everyone felt her pain, her regret. The children surrounded her, their blue light washing away her purple darkness. Her body started healing as the pure formula replaced her changed version. "I was so lonely," she whispered. "I just wanted to make everyone strong. Like me." Tommy and Lisa made a game of connecting people, running through the halls, making friendship chains, as they called them. With each new connection, more memories of past evolutions surfaced. They saw beautiful cities of light, people flying, minds working together to solve huge problems. But they also saw the mistakes, the fears that led to each reset. Susan Smith looked at her daughter with tears in her eyes. "This is why I couldn't tell you I was alive," she said. "You had to find your own way to the formula. You had to make it about healing, about helping. That's what was missing before." As the sun rose on a new day, humanity faced a choice. The reset button still waited. Some people were scared of such big changes. Others worried they weren't ready. But as they all shared their thoughts and feelings through the connection, something became clear. They didn't have to change everything at once. Tommy grabbed the reset button and easily pulled it out of the wall. It wasn't even plugged in anymore. "We don't need this," he said. "We can go slow, learn together, help everyone understand." Other children nodded, their wisdom shining through the connection. They would be the teachers this time, showing adults how to use these gifts wisely. Dr. Jane looked at her mother, then at all the families around them. She thought of her own journey, how trying to play God had led her to discover something much more important, how to be truly human. The next step in evolution wasn't about becoming powerful. It was about becoming kind. But in a far corner of the lab, hidden behind old machines, one guard who hadn't joined the connection was sending a message. "Phase 3 is ready. The children are the key." Not everyone was ready to give up control. A new challenge was coming, but this time they would face it together. 1 month after the big change, City Hope Hospital had become something new. They called it the Unity Center now. The glowing gardens had grown all around it, and people came from everywhere to learn about their new abilities. Tommy and Lisa Wilson had become everyone's favorite teachers, making learning fun even for scared adults. But not everything was perfect. Dr. Jane and her mother worked together, helping people whose bodies weren't accepting the change well. Some people got headaches from the connection. Others found their powers hard to control. The Wilson family opened their home to these struggling people, creating a safe place to practice and heal. Dr. Bob Taylor noticed something worrying. Some changed people were getting sick in a new way. Their blue light would flicker and fade, and they'd feel very tired. He kept careful notes, but didn't want to scare anyone yet. At night, he worked in his lab, trying to understand what was going wrong. Anna Parker's news stories about the change had made her famous. But one day, she got a strange email. Someone sent her pictures of children being taken away in black vans. The message said, "Not all changes are good. Meet me at midnight." It was signed, "A Friend." The guard who had sent the secret message was now working with a hidden group. They called themselves the Pure Humans. They were scared of the changes and angry about the connection. They had labs too, where they were trying to find a way to remove powers from changed people. Tommy made a scary discovery while playing with other changed kids. When they connected deeply, they could see bits of the future. They saw shadows coming, danger for the changed children. But when they tried to warn their parents, the connection got blocked. Something or someone was strong enough to stop their powers. Dr. Linda Chen was healing well, helping others understand the change. But she kept having strange dreams about a dark place under the desert where more experiments were happening. In her dreams, she heard children crying. When she told Dr. Jane about the dreams, they realized they weren't dreams at all. They were real messages coming through the connection. Bill Johnson and his FBI team found empty schools in small towns. Changed children had vanished, leaving worried families behind. The Pure Humans were telling parents they could cure their children, make them normal again. Some parents, scared of the changes, had agreed. One rainy night, Lisa Wilson woke up screaming. Through the connection, she had felt another child's fear. Someone was catching changed kids, trying to copy their powers in a mean way. But the Pure Humans didn't understand. The children's powers only worked with love and trust, never with force. Dr. Richard Green and Mike Brown discovered something in the hospital records. Before the big change, Dr. Linda Chen's group had made a list of special children, ones whose DNA was already different, ready for change. The Pure Humans had that list now. They were hunting these children one by one. Sarah Lee, the retired nurse, started noticing strange men watching the hospital. They carried devices that could detect the blue energy. She told Dr. Jane's mother, who recognized the devices. They were from her old lab, designed to track changed people. The Wilson family turned their big house into a safe home for changed children whose parents were scared or gone. Mary Wilson's healing powers helped calm the frightened kids. Tom Wilson taught them to be brave but careful. They called it the Blue Lighthouse, and it glowed softly every night, a beacon of hope. But one evening, something changed. All the children in the Blue Lighthouse suddenly got quiet. Through their connection, they felt something powerful waking up, deep under the desert. In the place from Dr. Chen's dreams, the Pure Humans had made a discovery. They found a way to take children's powers and give them to adults. But the process hurt the children badly. Tommy called all the changed children together through their connection. "We have to stop hiding," he said. "They're hurting our friends. It's time to show them what our powers are really for." The other children nodded. They had seen enough futures to know what they had to do. Dr. Jane looked at her mother, both understanding the truth. The real battle wasn't between changed and unchanged people. It was between those who wanted to use power to help and those who wanted to use it to control. The children had always known this. That's why they were the best teachers. As storm clouds gathered over the city, the children of the Blue Lighthouse joined hands. Their combined power sent a message to every changed person in the world. We're not alone. We're not wrong. We're just different. And now it's time to help those who are scared understand why different can be beautiful. But in their secret desert lab, the Pure Humans turned on a massive machine. Purple lightning shot into the sky. They thought they could force the change to work their way. They didn't understand that fighting nature never works. It only creates monsters. The sky turned an angry purple as the Pure Humans machine kept running in the desert. Changed people everywhere felt sick. At the Blue Lighthouse, Tommy gathered all 30 changed children in the big living room. "They're trying to copy our powers," he said, "but they're doing it wrong. It's hurting everyone." Dr. Jane and her mother worked frantically in their lab. The pure human's purple energy was fighting against the natural blue energy in changed people. Dr. Bob Taylor brought in more sick patients every hour. Their blue light was fading, replaced by painful purple sparks. Mary Wilson discovered something important while healing a sick child. The purple energy couldn't hurt people who were deeply connected to others. The scared and lonely ones got sick first. She told everyone to hold hands, to stay close, to share their feelings. Families huddled together, their blue light growing stronger. Through the connection, the children showed everyone a scary vision. The pure humans machine wasn't just copying powers. It was trying to force everyone to change their way. But forced change was dangerous. In the vision, they saw cities destroyed by people with purple energy, their powers out of control, because they didn't understand the need for love and connection. Anna Parker followed her mystery emailer's clues to a small house. Inside, she found Dr. Linda Chen's old assistant, Jack Torres. He was crying. "I helped them build the machine," he said. "I didn't know they would hurt children, but I know how to stop it." He handed her a box of old files marked Project Phoenix Failsafe. The pure humans had captured 20 changed children. They kept them in special rooms under their desert lab, using their energy to power the machine. But they didn't understand what Tommy and Lisa had learned. The children's powers grew stronger when they worked together. Even locked in different rooms, the children could still connect in their minds. Dr. Richard Green and Mike Brown discovered the desert lab's location, hidden in old hospital files. Bill Johnson's FBI team got ready to raid the place, but Dr. Jane's mother stopped them. "Force won't work," she said. "We need to show them why they're wrong. The children know how." The captured children had a plan. Every night at midnight, they joined their minds, gathering power. The pure humans thought their rooms blocked the connection, but love was stronger than any wall. Each night, the children's power grew. They were waiting for the right moment, the moment when all changed. People would connect at once. At the Blue Lighthouse, Tommy and Lisa taught other children how to share their power. "Think about someone you love," Lisa said. "The power comes from your heart, not your hands." Soon, every changed person learned that helping others made their powers stronger. The purple sickness couldn't fight against so much love. Dr. Linda Chen remembered something from her bad days. The pure humans machine was based on her old research, but she designed a weakness into it. Strong positive emotions would make it break down. That's why they had to keep the captured children scared and sad. Jack Torres told Anna Parker the full truth. The pure humans were rich, powerful people who were afraid of losing control. They didn't want evolution to make everyone equal. They wanted to control the change, to keep themselves more powerful than others. That's why they built the machine, to make their own kind of change that they could control. Sarah Lee found more hidden files. The pure humans had started as a secret group in the government, angry when Project Phoenix was shut down. They'd been planning this for 50 years, waiting for the right moment. Every time humanity got close to real evolution, they caused problems that led to a reset. On a stormy night, Tommy woke up with an idea. "The machine needs children's power," he said. "Then let's give them all of it at once." Through their connection, every changed child understood. The pure humans thought forced power was strong. Wait until they saw what willing, loving power could do. Dr. Jane looked at the tired faces of sick people in the Unity Center. "My mother tried to stop this 50 years ago," she said. "I tried to play God and accidentally helped start it again. But the children, they're the ones who really understand. They're not playing God or fighting God. They're just showing us how to love each other." The captured children smiled in their cells as midnight came again. In the Blue Lighthouse, Tommy and Lisa held hands with their friends. Across the world, changed children gathered in groups. Dr. Jane, her mother, and all the adults who understood stood ready to help. The purple lightning crackled in the sky, but a wave of blue light was rising to meet it. The real power of evolution wasn't in changing bodies or getting special abilities. It was in changing hearts, in choosing to connect instead of control. The pure humans were about to learn what real power looked like. And it was shining in the eyes of every child they had tried to cage. At exactly midnight, every changed child in the world joined hands in their minds. The captured children in the desert lab started glowing so bright that their cell doors melted. The pure humans' machines went crazy as more power flowed through them than ever before. "What are they doing?" screamed the pure humans' leader, watching his screens flash with warnings. But it was too late. The children weren't fighting the machine. They were giving it exactly what it wanted. Too much power. Way too much. In the blue lighthouse, Tommy and Lisa floated a few inches off the ground, their eyes shining like stars. "Everyone, connect!" Tommy called out. "Show them what real love feels like." Mary and Tom Wilson held their children's hands, adding their adult power to the children's pure energy. Dr. Jane and her mother joined the connection from the Unity Center. Every patient, their linked hands, their blue light growing stronger. Even some of the scared, unchanged people joined in, feeling the warmth and love flowing through the connection. The purple sickness started fading away. Through their shared vision, everyone saw what was happening at the desert lab. The captured children were free, floating in circles of blue light. The pure humans tried to run, but for the first time, they felt the connection too. All their anger and fear met a wave of pure love and understanding. Anna Parker filmed everything as the huge machine sparked and shook. Jack Torres worked quickly, typing commands into the computers. "The children are overloading it," he said, smiling. "But not with hate or force, with more love than it can handle." The purple lightning in the sky turned blue as the children's power took over. Inside the lab, the pure humans fell to their knees, crying. Through the connection, they felt everything they had done. They felt the pain of the children they had hurt. They felt the fear they had caused, but most importantly, they felt forgiveness. Dr. Linda Chen stood with Dr. Bob Taylor at the Unity Center, watching their patients heal. "We tried to force evolution," she said softly, "but it was already happening, wasn't it? In the children's hearts first, then in their bodies." Dr. Taylor nodded. "Sometimes the best medicine isn't medicine at all," he said. "It's love." The Desert Labs machine finally exploded in a huge flash of blue light. But instead of destroying everything, the energy spread out like a gentle wave. Everywhere it touched, plants grew, sick people healed, and scared people found peace. The children had turned a weapon of fear into a wave of healing. Bill Johnson and his FBI team reached the lab to find all the pure humans sitting quietly, changed by what they had felt. "Lock us up," their leader said. "We were wrong, so wrong." But Tommy and Lisa had a different idea. Through the connection, they showed everyone a better way. "No more us and them," Lisa said, taking the hand of a former pure human. "We're all just people. Some of us are ready to change, some aren't. That's okay. We can wait. We can help each other understand." In the days that followed, the Unity Center became a place of learning and healing. Dr. Jane and her mother taught people how to use their powers safely. Mary Wilson helped heal those who had been hurt. The changed children started a school to teach adults about love and connection. The Pure Humans Labs were turned into new Unity Centers. Their research helped doctors understand how to help people change safely when they were ready. The forced purple energy faded away completely, replaced by natural blue light that only came when someone chose to open their heart. 1 year later, Tommy and Lisa stood in the glowing garden at the Blue Lighthouse. Many children lived there now, learning and growing together. Some had parents who were changed, some didn't. But they were all family. Dr. Jane finally understood what she had really done. She hadn't played God when she made the treatment. She had helped unlock something that was in everyone all along. The power to choose love over fear, connection over control, understanding over anger. Sarah Lee and Anna Parker wrote a book telling the true story. They called it The Choice because that's what it had always been about. Not forcing change or stopping it, but letting each person choose when they were ready to open their heart. The reset button was never needed again. People learned to change slowly, naturally, helping each other along the way. The children led by example, showing that the greatest power wasn't in controlling energy or reading minds. It was in being kind, when you could be cruel, in forgiving, when you could punish, in connecting, when you could fight, and on quiet nights, when the blue lighthouse glowed softly in the dark, Tommy and Lisa would tell the younger children the story. Not as a scary tale about power and control, but as a reminder that love was the greatest force for change in the universe. After all, it had changed everything. Deep in their connection, all the changed people felt it. This evolution would last, not because it was forced or controlled, but because it grew from the heart. In trying to play God, Dr. Jane had helped everyone discover their own inner light, and that light would keep glowing, passed from heart to heart, forever.